Welcome to the 194th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Thanks for listening. Today, as promised, I have a guest, Dr. Mark Cucuzzella. He is from Shepherdstown, West Virginia. He is on faculty at West Virginia University's satellite campus over there in family practice. He is a lieutenant in the Air Force Reserves and served in the Air Force prior. He is the director of, or he created the U.S. Air Force Efficiency Running Program, as well as he is in the Hall of Fame for the Marine Corps Marathon. So he's a great resource. He has a running store in Shepherdstown. He does a lot for the community there with trying to get people to move. So I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. Before we get there, this is somewhat of a running episode, movement episode. His title of his book is Run for Your Life, and we talk mainly about movement and how running, even walking, can be so beneficial, and how it's some stretching things, more of mobility than stretching, but to get us active, to keep all our joints moving as we continue to age. In our practice, we focus on movement as well as nutrition. Certainly, you can eat a perfect diet, and if you sit in a chair all day, you're going to have issues. You can have the best exercise routine known to man, and if you eat rotten food, you're going to have issues. So it needs to be a combination of both, and we like to focus on that in our practice. I like to focus on that in my life. I'm training currently with Addie Meinrich, my registered dietitian. We're going to do the Thrill in the Hills 50K in January. So that's our next race. So, ramping up the miles there, trying to keep mobile, doing some weight training to try to, again, prepare for hills that we don't have here in Florida. Addie's ahead of me with all the hills she has up in Georgia as she's training. But, you do what you can, and the idea is to get out and enjoy yourself and get fresh air. And I like to run with my dogs as well as run by myself. I run and listen to podcasts, and it's how I hear about some of these people that I like to learn more from. So some of this interview is actually for me today, so that I can, I followed Dr. Cucuzzella on different podcasts over the years, and it's nice to get to talk to him and see his perspective on running and training, which is not a whole lot different from mine. He's obviously a much more accomplished athlete than I am or ever was, but nevertheless, I'll always be a wannabe, and I'm always learning and trying to get better. We talk a little bit about nutrition. Our views differ there. We're a whole food, plant-based, no added oils, salt, or sugar crew here. I deal with very sick cardiac patients, along with people with diabetes and a whole host of other lifestyle diseases that we're trying to reverse. But he is in a place in my beautiful state of West Virginia where he is trying to meet people where they are. So if he can get people off of refined foods, then he is actually making some big strides in doing that. I commend him on his exercise programs and running programs that he has for the community and everything that he does to give back to the community. Our practices are different, yet, I admire him for a similar. He spends time with his patients. He values listening to his patients. He has a practice that allows him to be able to spend time with people and to educate them. So, it's nice to hear similar voices out there and share experiences. And it's always good to hear somebody helping out, my home state of West Virginia. So, our dialogue will continue, I'm sure, over the years, and we'll continue to exchange information and hopefully allow me to educate that area more on plant-based medicine as, the opportunity arises. So I think without further ado, we'll get right into the interview, and I'll see you later. Don't forget, March 30th is our 4th annual Charlotte County Plant-Based Nutrition Conference. Dr. Alan Goldhammer will be our keynote speaker. We'll also have Addie Dulaney Meinrich, Nathan Meinrich, and myself as speakers. We'll have lectures, cooking demonstrations. It's a small venue so that you have time to meet everybody, ask questions personally in a group, We'll have a great plant-strong breakfast and lunch. Again, no sugar, oil, or salt. It's a great venue at the Twin Isles Country Club in Punta Gorda. You can make a weekend out of it. Addie and I are also doing private consultations on Friday, so you can come in, but there's lots of great running trails. Florida's a great time of year to get out and run, paddleboard, kayak, paddle, pickleball, tennis, golf. We're in a great location. Beaches are close by, so if you haven't been to our area, look forward to meeting you, and come down and make a nice weekend of it and enjoy our conference. So you can slide on over to drdulaney.com, DoctorDulaney.com, and click on the button. It'll get you to your tickets on Eventbrite. If you have any questions, you can always email me at Jami@drdulaney.com. Love to answer any questions about that or anything else about our practice. So without further ado, here's my interview with Dr. Mark Cucuzzella. Welcome, Dr. Mark Cucuzzella. I am so honored to have you on the podcast today, not only because you're a fellow mountaineer, but you're an awesome marathon runner. You're actually in the Marine Corps' Marathon Hall of Fame for your running accomplishments, and you just came out with a book called Run for Your Life, and it's fabulous. So welcome, Dr. Mark.
Well, it's a privilege to be on, Jami. I wish I was down in Florida now. It's kind of cold and wintry here, and you're in the land of sunshine.
Yeah, I will have to brag about my morning run. I think it was probably about 65 degrees, so perfect weather for a Floridian. It might be hot for you, but for a Floridian, it was a pretty good temp. So
maybe if I retire one day, head down there for at least the winter months, because it's nice to be barefoot, and my shoes are on for the rest of the winter here, sad to say, because it's cold, but it's fun. I like the seasons. It's beautiful out here all times of the year. You've been, coming from West Virginia, you kind of know that.
Yes, it's one of the reasons that pushed me to Florida was one particular winter that I shoveled more. That was my cross training activity, was shoveling snow. So I took it as an opportunity to get south and get to family down here. So, Dr. Mark, you're a great runner. You're a lieutenant in the Air Force Reserve. You're also a professor of family medicine at West Virginia University. And, we both have practiced, and I practiced in West Virginia as well. A lot of unhealthy beings, and, you're an avid runner. And one of the things that you start in your book is that anybody can run. So, and I heard you say on a podcast, and I was just like, I was grinning ear to ear. It doesn't matter. You can run. You can take this up at any age. So tell me a little bit about what got you to write this book and how things have progressed for you.
Gosh, yeah, writing a book, you probably know too about physician burnout. It's probably led you a little bit to finding your love and how to help people down in Florida. But, deciding to write a book is an endeavor, and it took me 5 years, which is probably 3 years longer than I thought. But really, Jami, I think my patients and my community here kind of gave me the book, and the Air Force. I spent 29 years in the Air Force and learning so much and having the opportunity to develop programs for the fitness test and helping people, try to love running. To pass a fitness test in the Air Force, this is something for your whole career. So it can't be some other chore or thing you hate to do. Once the people embrace it and they're not in pain, they actually look forward to their daily exercise, and then they can pass their tests without a bunch of stress. And I've made every mistake in the book, that's for sure. I'm sure through your athletic career you've done the same, and I think at a certain point you just want to share some of your experiences with people. And yes, I think, Jami, everyone can. It's a birthright to run. People come back from military theater with, no kidding, you'll see them at the Marine Corps Marathon. They have 2 above-knee amputations, and they're running the Marine Corps Marathon. So we all got something. I think my mom told me that at one point. So, yeah, we all got some little tweak or thing that's hurting us, but we can teach you how to get out of that and start to run again. And then the problems tend not to come back once you get your body kind of reset and moving better.
Yeah, you brought a really good really good point up when you were talking about a prosthetic leg. You're running on stump versus it's not that different from a hip replacement or a knee replacement when you have, that artificial joint cemented into your bone.
Yeah, people can run after joint replacements. That's another whole emerging field in orthopedics if you run correctly. If you do, and I describe it in the book, it's called slow jogging, which is like super, super easy, really kind of soft, springy landing. What you would do on a beach. And when you see like a 70 or 80-year-old out there, and they're moving probably slower than a walk at times, but it's almost like a meditation. But when people are runners, there's something kind of mystical or magic that happens when both feet are in the air. So if you have a runner come to you who's been told they can't run, and you just give them permission that they can run again, even if it's like super slow, it's crazy. You just gave them their life back, because someone extracted something from them that gave them daily joy, and it did so much for their brain and their emotions. Like if you take a runner and you ask them like 3 things that, if you removed them from their lives, it's like, okay, no, you can't do that. Probably 1 would be family, maybe number 2 would be your employment if you liked that. But then maybe 3 would be, well, you can't run anymore. They'll be like, no, I don't accept that. I'm going to go see someone else. That's, I opened a little running shoe store here, about 9 years ago, because, people find running stores because their doctors tell them not to run, and then they go to the local running store so someone can listen to them. But most of the time in a local running store, they don't understand biomechanics, and they'll tinker with things. So we just wanted to do it right here.
Yeah, I think when you we'll get into the shoes. That's a great topic to get into. But, you talk about things that I talk about on the podcast all the time is that, we can make people live long, but can we make them live well? And that, their functional lifespan or their health span is actually decreasing in the United States because, we're spending all our time sitting down.
Yeah. It's like Ken Cooper, former Air Force flight surgeon, he called it squaring off the curve, and George Bush, W in the eulogy, what did he say? It was profound. Live long, stay young and die quickly, or stay young as long as possible and die quickly, which is not happening in our country now. Now, our breadth of life is very narrow. We may have a long life expectancy, which in a world stage, it actually is not that long. I think women are 81 and men are 76. It's probably about 40 or 50, but we spend more time sick in that 76 or 81 years than any other place on the globe. So we do a lot of technology to keep people alive in frail states and in institutions. But, we all do want to, have dinner with our family, be out playing golf, go to bed and not wake up whenever that day comes. That's the glorious sunset.
Your book is really good about going through, how we start to get moving. There's always a big, stretch it, roll it. What do we do to get, these computer sitting by day bodies up so that we can move them in the, evening? Because, again, I'm sure you see it as much or more than me with the running store that, people go out and it's like, okay, we're going to be this weekend warrior. We're going to do the couch to 5K or the half marathon. And then they're injured. And it's not necessarily the running that does it. It's more of what's happened the rest of the day.
Yeah, I agree completely. I just came back from skiing this weekend in Park City. So so many people my age, I'm 52, will go out and do something that they used to take for granted. Even go out and play basketball with your kids and like tear your Achilles tendon just going up for a layup. And you're like, wow, how did that happen? When you're a kid, that never would have happened, because if you've decommissioned everything, for whatever period of time, and then you go out and just do a normal activity, your body just does not respond well. That fascia, that proprioception, meaning that just natural movement that happens unconsciously, gets decommissioned, eroded. So, if you like to do those type of activities, you're down in Florida now, maybe you like to water ski, that your odds of getting one of these catastrophic injuries, torn ACL, torn Achilles tendon, just by on a bunny slope even, goes way up because your body just is not responding. So, stay active and all day if you want to do those things that just bring you joy with your kids. but I'm at a stand-up desk right now, so you just have to do as much as you can to get off the seat, mix it up in the day.
Tell me a little bit about, some of your recommended routines as far as, to maintain your fascia. And our fascia, sometimes we think about it, it covers it covers us from head to toe, but it also goes between the muscle fibers, and it connects. That's why a baseball player can throw a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. That's why it winds up. And so tell us, tell a little bit about some of the things you said in the book, that are really good about keeping everything moving.
Yeah, most people, if you're, for the audience out there, so fascia is technically loose connective tissue. It really is this layer of, it's got nerves, it's got fluid running through it. It's tissue that springs, it responds. It's kind of like the casing of, think of like a sausage casing. It's this very fine fibrous material, but it functions as a spring, so it has this elasticity to it. So I think if you were to kind of put it simply, you'd keep it keen and treat it mean, meaning you want to mind your fascia, meaning I think nutrition, as you talk about, is huge. When a body's inflamed, say you're a diabetic and your hemoglobin A1C is 8 or 9, which means your sugars are constantly high. You wake up and you're inflamed, you're stiff, things are just sore. So nutrition's a huge part of maintaining our fascia. Hydration, if you're constantly in the state of dehydration. So think about this too, like if you're sitting all day and your hip flexors, so all that tight connective tissue in your hips, so that's going to start to constrict, and then you want to go do something where you have to extend from the hip, like run, it's not going to feel good. So you have to be in positions all day that mobilize that fascia. Think of like the injuries we get, like a frozen shoulder, and that happens really quick. So if you've injured your arm and put your arm in a sling, usually within 3 or 4 days, if you take the arm out of the sling, things are like stuck. You can't even move that shoulder, and you need someone to do all of this manual movement. So some of the maintenance stuff that I think everyone needs to do, everyone should probably find their own little morning routine, Jami, whatever that is. So mine is, I think I'd probably say 90% of people I see are super tight in the hip flexors and quads, just because we all have to sit. We have to drive, we sit at the dinner table. End of the day, we don't park the stand-up desk, and you want to sit in a chair. So in the morning time, I'll spend, 3 or 4 minutes just rolling out hip flexors, quads, a little bit of calf and Achilles tendon, and then I'll do some mobilization. So also that hip capsule, the hip is a ball and socket, so we have, like the golfers you'll see who are young and can hit the ball 300 yards, they have a lot of internal and external rotation of the hips. So that's another place where people will have deficits as they get older. And you'll see the older golfers, they look really stuck, and their swing 20 years ago was completely different. Like watch the senior, like the super senior tour, you'll see these guys who used to be able to, shoot in the 60s, now can hit the ball 150 yards, and they're like stuck. That's because their hips are stuck. So doing things, like I describe it in the book, they're like windshield wiper kind of exercises that get your hips going into internal and external rotation. But these things don't need to take long. I think if you pick 3 or 4 things that you know that you need assistance with as maintenance, and maintenance isn't sexy, everyone likes all the fancy treatment, but maintenance, and no matter what it is, it just doesn't get the respect as fancy treatment. But I'm a big fan of maintenance, so find your maintenance. But no kidding, if you do have a fascia injury, say you got this knot like in your calf, Achilles, just something that's just chronically inflamed, chronically being irritated, that's where you have to kind of go in and really work that manually, because you can't just stretch that out. Think of like a knot. If you just pull that knot tighter, it's you got to unwind that knot. So if you don't have insight into this, you really do need to find someone like whether it's a massage therapist, a good physical therapist who can do an assessment, because I think intuitively a lot of folks don't know where they're tight or where they're weak, and they need someone to instruct them on where their deficits are. And I'm sure, wherever you're listening from, there's some good people out there that you can find.
It brought up a funny story. like we talked about before we started, I grew up as a golfer, and we also in the practice have wellness challenges, and we have some people that have some phenomenal steps, and people wear these Fitbit watches and and different watches, and I'm always looking at what gives you steps. And so the other day, my mom still golfs, and it's like, what are your steps like when you're golfing? Because she actually rides. She's 85. She rides in a golf cart.
Oh wow, still playing.
Oh yeah, she plays. She does Zumba and she does yoga. So she's like the ideal movement queen. But I started. I haven't golfed in years. I started running, doing triathlon, so all straight, forward, backward motions, not much side to side.
Stuff.
Exactly. So I got up and I started swinging like I was swinging the golf club, and I thought, and I was a 10 handicap golfer, so I knew what I was doing at the time, had a good swing, and I started to swing. It's like, oh my God, my golf swing went away. My hip flexors were tight, and I wasn't getting the range of motion that I was getting. It's like, oh my goodness, it's like my hips are tight.
Do some hip internal external rotation.
Oh yeah, and it's like that really
come back.
It really hit the nail on the head, because I've been having some issues, and I've been doing some mobilization things, and it's getting better, but it's like I still have, that was a great test. It's like I got a ways to go here, because I don't have the golf swing that I had 20 years ago, that's for sure. It's too funny.
But yeah, you can get that back, unless you've got really severe arthritis in your hips. Basically you would lay down, put your feet kind of a little wider than shoulder width, and you would just drop your knees to kind of opposite sides and keep your pelvis kind of anchored to the ground. And, you'd see the one hip is going to go into internal rotation, the other is going to go into external, almost like a windshield wiper. Mm-hmm. And the people that are stuck, they try to do that, and their back will come off the ground because they can't rotate their hips at all. But I think that's in running too. A lot of people don't realize, because I think runners, the main deficit I see is they don't get any hip extension. They're all out in front. They throw their leg out in front, but they can't activate their glutes or get any hip extension. But to get hip extension, you also need to have internal rotation at the hip joint. So if you're really stuck in that hip capsule, you're going to have a hard time running efficiently, because you're not going to be able to get that movement. And you see, like if you watch the walkers, people get more hip extension walking than running most of the time. If you watch like on the beach, people walking like speed walking, they get a lot of hip extension. And then you see the kind of older shuffler, they get like no hip extension. But even going for really good just power walks, just walk everywhere you can, you're going to maintain your hip extension. And then when you run, you can tap into that. So quite often, I think they call it the active couch potato syndrome. Jami, you probably see that down in Florida, other than folks like your mom who are active retirees. They sit at the computer all day and they want to go get their 30-minute run in, and they're just stuck. But the people, like say you lived in New York City and you walked, 4 miles just to get from here to there, and then you went for your 30-minute run. I think that run is going to feel so much better. Your body's going to be so much more mobile than the person who's just coming off of the computer station.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, it's just a matter of, staying mobile. And that's, one of the things we assess with our wellness practice, people's ability to move and get off the floor. It's huge to be able to, you talk about the Turkish get up, which is a fabulous exercise.
Yeah,
you got to be
a great exercise.
Mobile. But, if you can't get off the floor, it's a big danger, because if you land down there, it could, you could be there for a while. And we have those people that are down for a while, You also...
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, the day you cannot get up, I think you're in trouble. I think it's big trouble. And we all I've got aging parents who are having difficulty. I don't think any of them can get up off the floor right now. And it's just, one thing after another.
We always tease my mother because she's fiery, as you're starting to probably get the idea. And she's always trying to keep her off a ladder during Christmas, hanging decorations and things, But she always takes the Christmas tumble. We always say she's actually very good at tucking and rolling, because even though she gets in a hurry and gets her feet twisted up and goes down, she kind of bounces right back up. So she had her yearly tuck and roll test, and here to say that she can still tuck and roll. So.
And the other thing, Jami, down there in Florida, which is good about running, even if it's like super, super ridiculously slow running, is that impact of landing while running stimulates the bone remodeling more so than walking. So just any impact that's a little over 1G, like a little bit of a tap like that, keeps your bones strong. And the more you can keep your bones strong, if you do, no kidding, we're all going to have that fall, but you want to be able to tuck and roll it and not fracture your hip. But yeah, keeping people running is a good preventer for the hip fractures.
With your running store, and you assess people and try to work them down into, you're an advocate of as little shoe as possible to be able to feel the ground. And we were talking earlier, there's a thing called earthing, and if you can, get in your bare feet and just kind of neutralizing your electrons, and there's some goodness about it. But just feeling the ground and the proprioception that comes back up to your head to keep, again, to help with stability and not falling down. But we see the running with Born to Run that came, the minimalist shoe came into vogue, and a lot of people jumped on the wagon, probably with bad form. With running, there's injuries because a lot of us start out, or like of everything we've said, bad form, tight, whatever. And then it's kind of gone all the way back around to these big giant cushion shoes, and now we're actually starting to come. It looks like
around again.
Going to come back around again. With the Nike Vapor Fly 4%. Now it's coming back around a little bit. So
it's like nutrition. It's like eat real food. So it's like there'll be different camps and opinions and.
Exactly.
But it all comes down to the basics. If you understand human design and you can complement human design, you're on the right path. Whether it's what you put in your body or what you put on your body. But so now the big bulk, I go every year to the big running trade show, to see what's new, and all these big stack height shoes are disappearing. But again, the minimal movement has not gone away. The only people who say that the minimal movement are gone away really don't understand what it is. It's like saying, well, the human foot is now obsolete. There's some improvement in that, because the people that got hurt, every day there are runners getting hurt in big, bulky, conventional shoes. But that didn't make the news, because 60% of runners get hurt every year. And there's like millions of runners, and I don't even know what that number is now. It's like 60 million people in America run. It's like the most common activity. But if one of them got hurt in a Vibrant Five Finger, that would be news. The other 40 million who get hurt every year in a big, bulky beast or whatever the hell those things are, that's not interesting. So yeah, if you didn't do it smart, like whether you run barefoot, have a big shoe, or have a minimal shoe, you're probably going to hurt yourself. But the people, it's crazy, the people that really do relearn to run with less shoe, I've never seen them go back to the big, bulky shoes, because they get so much more enjoyment out of just feeling the ground. It's this experience. If you can feel that step and you can control that landing with your foot, and most of them slow down, so it's not about speed. I go much slower if I'm barefoot than if I have a pair of shoes on, because you can go more reckless in the shoes. But just that pleasure you get out of being out there, especially if you're on a beach, being truly barefoot. So not even in a minimal shoe, just being truly barefoot, adds just this other layer of the earthing you mentioned. There probably is something going on to either your metabolism or your tissues or maybe your brain, when your foot is completely barefoot on the ground.
What about I think it's interesting, as far as like this recent with the 2 hour, the Nike project to get the 2 hour marathon, and they now they're putting a carbon plate. Is that carbon plate something that is making what does that do to your foot responsiveness, and does only like as in a disc wheel when you're riding a bike, you have to be a good cyclist to be able to go fast enough to
be able to utilize that. Mm-hmm.
Is it the same thing?
So a little bit on the carbon plate. So if you're a 4-foot track runner, like Kipchoge, ran 2 hours and 25 seconds, and then he ran 2:01 in Berlin, without the pace setters. That is incredible human performance. That's off the charts human performance. But yeah, so if you watch him run, he runs perfectly. I mean, he is the gold standard, right? He ran 2 hours, so no one in the world has ever run as well as he is currently running. But yeah, so if you load your forefoot and when you toe off, you actually, you dorsiflex, meaning you bend the toes up a little bit to roll off on takeoff. And if you have a carbon fiber there and you're loading that perfectly, think of like the blade runners, who have the amputations. And when they load those blades perfectly, they're going to get this wonderful recoil. So yeah, there probably is something. No, he is running faster in that shoe than he would run barefoot, no doubt. He ran 2:01 in Berlin, and if he ran that barefoot, he would not be running 2:01. He'd have to do more work. But does he train in that shoe every day? Probably not. He's probably mixing it up and training in a variety of surfaces. He's got a super strong foot, and then he puts that shoe on race day, and it might give him, I don't think it gives him 4%. There's been stuff written about, the efficiency of the shoe, even in the best runner, because his best times without that shoe were still like 2:04-ish. So it's not 4%. It's along the lines of maybe 1 to 2% in someone like Kipchoge. But it's a nice marketing move by Nike, because now you go out to these races and you see people running 4-hour marathons in these shoes who don't load on the forefoot, so they're not getting any advantage from that $260 shoe. But I think definitely the best track runners, forefoot runners in the world probably do get a little advantage from that shoe. Are they going to come out and make like performance enhancing drugs? Are they going to somehow level the playing field? And I'm out of that game, but they might. I mean, who knows? But they took, remember, the South African amputee runner.
Pistorius. Pistorius,
yeah, Oscar Pistorius, before he got into his legal troubles, but he, an amazing runner, but they actually took that to the Olympic Committee with the scientists, and they came out, there was a National Science Foundation Olympic show about this, and it showed that the human fascia was actually better than the carbon spring, because they tried to make the case that he had an advantage, and then they got all the smart scientists in the room. So we'd going back to fascia, because really, if your fascia is working well, your body's like a super ball. You throw it on the ground and it bounces up. It's like kids jumping rope. But when the human fascia is tuned perfectly, you get this beautiful recoil. So I don't know if they're going to do the experiment of the shoe against barefoot, but these city streets are probably not friendly to 26 miles of barefoot running at that pace.
No, and you pretty much then, I mean, it depends on where you hit, obviously, but the flatter the shoe, the better as far as the drop go. Is that what you recommend as well?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, because if you look up the kinetic chain, so as soon as you put, 4, 6, 10% grade under the heel, meaning your body is tilted 10% forward, you have to make adjustments up your kinetic chain at the knees and the hip and the lower back. And, we just have just a plethora of all these hip and back injuries now, chronic pain. But once that foot's flat on the ground, the rest of the body can align itself properly. I'm sure you've traveled to these places where they might wear sandals. You go to any part of Africa, developing countries, and there's no such thing as back pain. And they're carrying like tons of weight on their head, and they don't have any problems at all because their foundation is flat. If you took a building or a stack of hockey pucks and you tilted the bottom up at 10 degrees, everything's got to adjust up the kinetic chain. So race day, I think if you took someone like Kipchoge, who ran 2:01, and you put him on a little tilt race day to kind of give him a little more lean, he might get a little more advantage that one day. But I don't think that's the position that he wants to be in every day of the year for every minute he's on his feet. Again, there's things that might give you a little advantage for performance, but that's not how you train every day. You train your body to be resilient, and then everyone's looking for some edge on race day. But, get out there and run barefoot on the beach, and that's the way to get yourself super strong, and then go put some shoes on, the lightest you can safely wear on race day, and that's going to be your best bet.
Yeah, I recently...
Yeah, the weight matters. Most people know that, obviously. You put a ski boot on your feet, and just the thought of running is horrible. You can walk to the lift, but that's what a lot of shoes are like.
Yeah, it was funny on the bus to the start on the California International Marathon, there was a plethora because it's a Boston qualifier.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
there was everybody's
that race because it's downhill.
Yeah, everybody had those Nike shoes on, and everybody was looking at the feet, and it was pretty interesting.
Did you run it this year? Did you just come back?
We ran
Oh,
it this year.
so did a lot of people have that shoe?
Yeah. There were
Wow.
quite a number of people with those shoes that are that were, I would say in the 3 to 3 hour range marathoner, the 3 to 3.5. There were a lot of those people talking about
People trying to get their Boston qualifier. So again, that's the group that's trying to get like 1%.
Get that one more minute.
They tighten up the standards.
Yeah, people were saying that they didn't have much durability in them. And
it's a good business model, right? You wear it like the racing bikes, the tires. Wear it once and they self-destruct. And you got to go buy another pair.
Well, we always, giggle at the Ironman expos when people will buy just about anything if they think they're going to get a couple minutes faster, but or lighter. So you'll pay $100 for a couple $100 extra for a set of pedals that are 200 grams lighter. When if you just didn't eat quite as much the night before, you'd have it. But
yeah. And then you look around their waistline and a little less junk food. they would do, carrying 10 pounds of belly fat around.
Exactly.
Not a good idea either.
Exactly. So, you have a private, are you full-time faculty at West Virginia, or do you have a practice at, separate from the university?
No, I work for WVU, so I do part of my time, Jami, in the hospital teaching residents and students, doing the full breath, like when you're doing your internal med training before cardiology. So we have a 24-bed critical access hospital. So we don't have specialists. We don't have any cardiologists we can call. It's us and us. So we do a lot of ICU. But sadly, I'd say 80% of our admissions are lifestyle-related illnesses. They're exacerbations of chronic disease, acute coronary syndromes. Sadly, we do see a lot of opiate overdoses. But it's all the same stuff, that I talk about in the book. It's preventable things. So the hospital's a great opportunity to help teach people because they're there and they just had something happen. So they're listening, whether they just had an MI or they've got an exacerbation of their heart failure, infection from a diabetic foot ulcer. So it's a captive audience. So we do a lot of nutrition teaching in the hospital. But then I have a practice outside of that. Is called the West Virginia University Center for Diabetes and Metabolic Health. So kind of as you're doing, so we have a clinic now that's prescribing lifestyle. I want to prescribe someone lifestyle med, not a lifetime of medication, so to speak. So yeah, we try to pull them off the meds, by teaching them if you don't eat a lot of simple sugar, your blood sugars are lower. It's pretty easy. And the hospital's a crazy place to show this to people because they're captive and they come in on, 200 units of insulin, giving themselves 30 units before every meal indiscriminately. And you just say, look, trust me here. We're not going to feed you any sugar and we're not going to give you the insulin. Let's see what happens. We do low carb hospital menus, 10 gram carb per meal. It's got a lot of vegetables on there. Yeah, we do have, we differ a bit, and I'm from West Virginia. Yeah, so we have good quality meats that they're allowed to eat on this diet, but we get them off all the sugar and starch, and we see what happens to their blood sugars, and it just incredibly improves, even within 24 to 48 hours, and it gives them hope. So if people have hope versus despair, I think there's so much despair in chronic disease where people just don't know there's a way out. And if we can give people hope, then they can find their path, whatever that path is, but try to give them hope. But yeah, we see them as an outpatient too. So from the hospital, we can transition them to a clinic that'll support this, and I get text messages every day. They have to have glucometers, you have to be accountable to these folks, kind of as you are. They text message me their sugars. Okay, it's fine to come down a bit more on your insulin. So it's like landing a plane safely.
Yeah, I think that, that's where more of an academically supported practice is helpful in this arena as well, because you have time. You're not running, you don't have to see 50 people in a day in clinic, so you actually have time to teach people. I think, the the
Yeah, I
ideal.
got out of that world like 6 or 7 years ago. I was on a 6-month military assignment. This was part of working with the fitness test, and I was in that, every, 10-minute patient visits, and I realized that it was all crazy. I was like, I can't go back and do that anymore. There's a better way to do it, and that's where I jumped into the hospital and then started this work with disease reversal, where I do have a half hour that I can take with people.
Yeah, I think, you spoke about it's great that you're teaching the residents this, because I spoke actually at a family medicine in South Carolina, their annual meeting, and so many young physicians came up to me, already burnt out because they're trying to, they're just prescription pad writers and putting out fires. And what do we do? And, it seems to me that, if we could get more small practices, more funded practices, that you're not worried about keeping the lights on and making sure that, you've got all these, 6,000 billers to try to, make sure that, you're going to get reimbursed from wherever. And actually take time with people to be able to educate them. It's better for everybody. It's a much better lifestyle for the physician, that you actually get to interact with patients, which is why we went to medicine in the first place, is to be able to listen to people and to actually help them. And like you said, you give people hope, and you give them your time, and they're going to be a lot more receptive.
What I think, Jami, they've extracted out of medicine, and maybe if you're out there and you're a patient, you can relate to this, is, somehow it's human connection, whether you're a cardiologist or a general practitioner like myself. And, I think that drew most people into medicine was human connection, unless you were just going to destined to be, pathology or radiology. So there are a few fields in medicine where you don't really have any human connection, but all the technology is really stripped, and all the regulations and the guidelines and the protocols and the administrative burdens and electronic records have really stripped that from people, and that just takes your soul away. And that's why about 50% of primary care docs, are burnt out. They're just, and that I think we're the number one field of occupational suicide, which is really sad. Physician suicide rates are like way higher than other fields. And I think there's just something to that. And I don't know if we can go back, because it's kind of like the train has left the station, so every place now has these cumbersome records that are electronic, so that you don't have that. You're not even looking at the patient anymore. I do all my charting of that stuff at home at night. I just shut it off while I'm talking to a patient, take a couple hand notes, and then later at night, which isn't a good idea either, because then you're up, have a date with your electronic medical record. And still, at least I leave the day and feel like I spoke to people. Yeah. But I'm not seeing someone every 10 minutes now.
Yeah, no, it's a game changer. And you're doing some running clinics as well. So you're actually working with people on improving their running form?
Yeah, we do that out of the store, which is really fun. And then I teach some medical courses on this, on the whole science of running. But yeah, about once a month we'll do a beginning running workshop here. We have 4 treadmills in the store. We'll videotape them. We'll put them through, some mobility assessments, strength assessments. So we just go really to the basics. And even people that are pretty advanced, they like coming to these, because even people that are pretty advanced, if you forget the basics, you can always improve by going back to the basics.
Absolutely. And you're a big advocate of, I saw in the back of your book, you've got some marathon training plans, and you follow the Arthur Lydiard method. Yes. For the most part, a few hard sessions, but the most part, nice and easy.
Yeah, and I think unless you're like a Marine and you'd like to go out and just run hard every day, and I think that's the minority, most people run to escape or to relax from the rest of their busy day. So if running was another painful exercise or chore, most people would just abandon it. So going out and running soft and easy is something most people look forward to, and actually it's the best way to get faster. So it's like a double win, because, unless you're going to run a 400-meter race or shorter, it's all about aerobic development, which is time on your feet, mitochondrial growth, capillarization, that happens from the slow running. then if you have a race, certainly do some stuff as you get closer to a race that's going to be at the tempo of your race. But, 90% of your running is well below race pace. And I think the people who have longevity in the sport can attest to that. I'm on, ran 30 straight years under 3 hours for a marathon. And, each year I probably do less and less at race pace because life just gets busier and you just want to, you run just to relax your brain, and going out and doing intervals after a day of work or at 5 a.m. just doesn't really appeal to me. I just want to go out and maybe put a podcast on, listen to an audio book and just go run for an hour, or take that off and just run up the trail and, listen to the leaves.
Yeah, it always makes for a better day to go out. I know you run some of your miles with your dogs. I run with 2 German Shepherds in the morning. I usually take them for a run, then maybe go out for a little bit more. And they're my warm up, so to speak, or at least one of them's my warm up. The other one can keep going. And
my dog's getting a little bit older. She's my warm up now at 10 years old.
Yeah, but it's good for them. It's great for the dogs. My dogs are nice and lean. It's we both feel good. It's a great motivator, and it's nice to see the sun rising, and it's just a great way to start your day. Are you an advocate of time as far as your marathons? Like do you cut your long run off at a certain time, or do you try?
Yeah, I'm all time based, and I think that's the best way. Just if you're out there listening, is just time based. Okay, today I'm going to run a half hour. Tomorrow 50 minutes. And just know your level of effort. Conversational effort is where most of your running should be, which is at aerobic level, meaning that's where you're actually tapping into fat reserves, because that's the healthiest metabolism, to be in for any endurance exercise. There's less exhaust, so to speak. If you're going to get from point A to point B, your beta oxidation of fat's going to be your own fat, not what you eat is the most, that's why we can run super long distances without power bars. That's the safest place to be. That's slower running. And most of us, have this block in our day, whether it's an hour at lunch. And if you put pressure that I've got to run 6 miles or something like that, and say you're just not feeling good, you're going to be at an effort much higher because you feel like you've got to hit some mile pace, or you've got some Strava or Garmin. Just go turn that stuff off and just pick time.
You think
that's how Lydia did it too. They didn't know like how far today's a 30-minute run, 60-minute run. That's at whatever effort, because that easy effort one day you're just feeling good, and it could be a 50-degree day, and that effort could be 2 minutes a mile faster on that day versus you're in Florida, say it's 95 degrees and 90% humidity. The same effort's going to be way slower, but that's okay. You want to go with that slower pace, just the same easy effort.
And what would be do you cut off the duration for the longest run?
I think it depends on your experience, because you don't want to get hurt. So if you can make it, and you've run marathons, I think if you get to the starting line healthy, you'll finish the race. As long as you've done some training. It's like the last lap. You're going to finish the race. If you're hurt, fried, you're not even going to get to the starting line. You'll be trading in your bib. So get to the starting line healthy without overtraining. So the more time I think you've had just in years running, the less you need to do, just because that's just cumulative. I don't run more than a couple hours. Maybe I'll be out 2.5 hours. If it's just a nice day and I'm on a longer loop with friends. But if you're going to do like a 5-hour marathon, you probably do want to be out on your feet about 3 hours, and mix that with a walk run. I think people think that they need to go out on like a 2-hour run, but if you're going to run your marathon at 3.5, 4 hours, 4.5 hours, really anything over probably 3 hours and 15 minutes, I think you're going to benefit by adding walk breaks, often, whether it's every kilometer, every mile, put 30 seconds to a minute of a good power walk in there. Your heart rate comes down, you open your hips up, it just resets you. So practice that in your training. So if you're doing a marathon and it is in that slower range, 4 hours plus, which isn't, that's the healthy range. Add walk breaks in, and you'll find that it's way better on your body.
Yeah, I found that, it took me a long time to give into that. And when I did, I realized those last miles feel so much better. And,
Yeah, and it's fun.
And I do better. I actually do
Be
better.
better.
And you always feel better when you're passing somebody at the end, no matter where it is.
Yeah, it is. Like when your brain says, I'm done, it's a bad place to be. If your brain is feeling, your brain's captain of the ship, right? When your brain says, oh, I'm feeling good, and that's fun, right? You're picking it up.
Well, fabulous. Well, and you direct some races. The races that you direct are in Virginia?
West Virginia.
In West Virginia. Okay, I didn't know if they were on both sides of that, because I saw some things in North Carolina, or no?
No, we do. We have a couple races here. Actually, we have a whole series of races here in West Virginia. We kind of host out of the store. They're nonprofit.
Uh-huh.
So we raise money to do things for public health in our community. We've built about 12 fitness trails in schools. We fund different outdoor activities for kids, running camps. So we want to kind of just give all that back. I mean, we're in a very unhealthy state, sadly. We're number 1 in obesity, number 1 in diabetes. We're number 50 when it comes to built trails, that you probably where you are, there's a lot of nice little bike paths and things. So we just don't have that stuff. So we can only improve. And it's a grind, to try to make these changes. But, I think we're making change in our community.
That's fabulous. I applaud you. Always will be a mountaineer at heart, so it's nice to hear people making inroads. I did run the Hetfield and McCoy Marathon
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's in the total opposite side of the state.
Yeah, other side is southern,
Williamson.
southwest. Yeah, Williamson, and it was quite fun. So, and I did the Morgantown Marathon.
Alexis directs that. Bautista.
Uh-huh. And the Morgantown Marathon. Have you been up to there yet?
I haven't done the race, but I know the race director, Jami Summerlin.
Yeah, it's they did a really nice job. I ran the inaugural one of the Morgantown Marathon. Quite hilly after being gone for a while from the hills, so but it was fun. So, well, your book is fabulous. I'll leave links in the show notes where everyone can get a hold of you, and if you're any place close to him, please go to his running store.
Come out to Two Rivers Treads, or Freedom's Run is our race series. You can find that on freedomsrun.org. These are old school. You can park and walk to the start line, and low cost. We got beer at the end, so these are just your old school kind of races.
I love it. Well, I hope to get up to one of those someday,
and
maybe even to the running store. That would be fabulous.
Yeah, we'll do a show out of the store. Come to a workshop.
All right, that would be great. I'll have to. I will like to put that on my calendar at some point. So we'll.
In May we have the Harpers Ferry Half Marathon, and you're probably familiar with that national park. It's hopefully they'll be open by May. We'll see. We're day 6 of the government shutdown now, but.
Well, I wish you a mild winter.
Yes.
And, congrats on the book. It's wonderful. And I look forward to speaking to you soon.
All right, Jami. A pleasure being on the show.
All right. Thanks. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. Thank you again, Dr. Mark Cucuzzella. His book, Run for Your Life, available on Amazon. Check out his running store, Two Rivers Treads, and that is TWRIVERSTREADS.com. You can also go to runforyourlifebook.com and get information about the book. Check out, if you're in his area, check out some of his races, his running camps. And again, I hope you enjoyed the interview. Hop on over to the website, drdulaney.com, to get your tickets for the 4th Annual Charlotte County Plant-Based Nutrition Conference. Check out what we have to offer as far as becoming a member of our practice, to get off your medications, to reverse your lifestyle diseases. Email me with any of your thoughts, Jami@drdulaney.com. It's Jami. I'll look forward to speaking with you next week. Have a good one.